child, the family members' ages, the number of students in college, and other factors. Financial aid eligibility depends on your debt-to-income ratio and credit standing. Let me translate that. You could be making $1 million a year and never have been late on a credit card, but if they consider your debt is too high for the amount of income, you could be turned down for financial aid. So that's a very tricky factor. And by the way, just a little hint. If you have income or assets in the name of the child and you expect financial aid, get it out of there because you're going to get ripped off big time. They charge much, much more for those things when they're in the child's name than in the parents'. Okay, here's an example of the expected family contribution. If the family income is $85,000 and you're talking about a state college, then EFC will be estimated to be $19,000 or so. On the other hand, if it's a private college, which is much more expensive, EFC will be estimated at $29,000. By the way, here's a very important point. Just because in one college is very expensive and the other looks a lot cheaper, apply to the more expensive one too, because they have a lot more money to give away than does a state school that's pretty broke. And therefore, by the time they get through all the awards they could make, the fact that the tuition is much higher may have been completely passed by the fact that there's a lot more money available to you. Well, the question is, what if your family had more than one student in college at one time? Well, this can work for you, or can work against you. Let's say that your EFC was $30,000 and you had 3 children in college. You could divide that up. You don't have to come up with that money for each of the children. You could take 30 divided by 3, so each child is an EFC of $10,000. Well, I try to look up here what various colleges cost these days. And the first one I picked, Ivy League, Columbia University. This is the school I went to for my bachelor's. At the time I went there, I was a GI. I went on the GI Bill. I was $115 a month. And my family kicked in $14 a week, $7 for the room, $7 for the board. I ate so much spaghetti and tuna that I'm still sick of it. However, you notice the price now is $61,000 a year, cost of attendance. And you got at least 4 years. Now, if you're talking a private college, then the University of San Diego is an example, not much less. It's $57,000. Let's talk Cal State Northridge, which is fairly local to us here. That's $24,000. And we'll take a community college, assuming you live there. It's going to be a heck of a lot cheaper if you don't, but I'll explain why that's not a good idea. If you live there, then it'd be $17,000. Okay, now, the reason I say that if possible the students should live at school is get a whole bunch of different experiences. I've tried it both ways. My first college I lived home. Later at Columbia I lived there, and I lived at home again when I went to George Washington, and so on and so on. I went to 9 colleges, so I pretty well know different kinds of colleges. The story here is that when you are living there, you meet a lot of people who become your lifetime friends and probably can help you pretty well later in your career. And here's an example. Somebody was arguing with me as to who really owns the banks. So I took the time and looked it up in the pre-Google days. Almost every head of every bank went to Yale. I think there's a message there. Not because they're especially good at banking, but because they help each other. Now, here's something that's really scary. Remember when you could get a 4-year degree? Those days are disappearing fast. At state colleges now, 57% of the students now take up to 5.8 years to graduate. Reasons for that, there's a couple of them. One is that a lot of third world countries have a lot of children from wealthy families these days, and they want them to get a U.S. education, so they're pouring in here by the millions. The other thing is that students have so many, well, there's 13 million students a year who go to college. And the problem is they can't get the classes they need to get their degree, so they got to come back later and come back later. And all of that costs the parents out of their pocket every year. Now, 5.8 years is a long time to get a 4-year degree. On the other hand, if it's a private college where they have more money and more classes and fewer students, the average student now takes 4.2 years to graduate. Some parents think they ought to send their child to a community college. I know the thought because I did it. You go to an inexpensive college for 2 years, you get your liberal arts out of the way, then you transfer to a good 4-year college and you complete your degree. Sounds terrific. Well, here's the other part of those statistics. 60% of community college students drop out in their first semester, and only 8% get a 4-year degree. Many transferees drop out after they've transferred, and there's 2 reasons for that. And I was subject to this one too. Students are unprepared academically or financially. In my case, Columbia wouldn't accept a lot of the classes that I took at that teacher's college, so I had to redo an entire year. So these are all very real issues. What are the college saving strategies that are out there? Well, first of all, you put your money in stocks and mutual funds. Then there's the famous, I think probably the most famous of all the ways, the 529 college saving plans. There's checking and CDs, bonds, savings accounts. There's life insurance. There's variable life insurance, which is based on the stock market, although it's still life insurance. There's annuities and variable annuities, again based on the stock market. There's retirement plans like 401k, IRA, SEP. Then there's something called the Roth IRA, which is an inverse IRA. And last is the free one, college cash flow, which I'll get around to explaining. In college cash flow, what I'm talking about is this. I read about a woman whose husband lost his job, and she had to do something to help support the family, so she decided she was cut the waste out of the budget. She got out of the health club. She got rid of the expensive TV and got a smaller one. She dumped the maid. She did a lot of different things like that. She got rid of one car, raised the deductible. At the end of the year, she had made an extra $35,000 a year. And she was so good at this, she got a job with a major corporation doing the same thing for them, and in the first year she saved them $2 million. So yeah, there's a lot of money that can be handled if you look carefully at where your money's going. Well, how much savings is going to be enough? Well, I don't have a crystal ball, so I don't know what college is really going to cost in 15 years. You know, the economy changes on a dime. I have no idea what the future inflation rate is going to be. I certainly have no idea what the government's going to do. They've already made 2 changes in the last month. They say usually the government changes the rules about every 3 months. What field is the child going to go into? Is the child going to be an underwater marine expert, or is he going to go for a brain surgeon? All I'm saying is save everything you can. It will be needed. So what do you do from here? You start the savings program immediately. You avoid so-called experts who are unfamiliar with college funding, and let me round that out a little. I spoke to 20 different financial advisors. Some were attorneys, some were accountants, some were financial planners, some were high school guidance counselors. Every one of them recommended the 529 plan, which in my estimation is probably the worst of all possible options for a lot of reasons I'm not going to go into now. Find yourself a good college planning specialist to work with, someone who's well versed in college funding. And then identify the factors that the whole family must change to ensure the child goes to college. For example, help that child get higher grades. Make sure as the child matures, goes and gets community service under his belt. Why? Because if a college has 2 students applying, one has community service and one doesn't, they'll invariably take the one with community service. Pick the best college for the student. That's an ordeal. It isn't something real simple. You know how most kids pick their college and pick their career? Hey, Charlie, you're going to school with me. What college you going to? Oh, Michigan State? Yeah, that's a good, I think I'll go there too. It doesn't work very well that way, and picking a major doesn't work that way either, but the kids have no experience in doing this, so you've got to watch this closely. What do you do next? I have put together a report. It's a report that colleges hope you never get to see. It's called 9 New Ways to Beat the High Cost of College. This goes beyond the problem of the young children and gets into the children who are getting close to college age. You should link up, as I said, with a college planning specialist. You should identify and start work on areas the student and parents need improvement. And if anybody out there is interested, you can contact me at the address and email and website, etc., to get a free, no obligation consultation. So I want to thank you all for listening. I hope I didn't bore you to death. So good night.